This lesson is going to discuss the elements of an epic, and let's just go ahead and jump right into it. What is an epic? In ancient Greek literature, an epic poem was a long narrative poem about the adventures of gods or a hero. And in the story that we're going to read, it is a very long poem, and it has some elements of poetry, but it doesn't necessarily read like a poem like we think of, and like with a rhyming scheme and that sort of thing. But it is a narrative poem, meaning that somebody is telling a story. And so what traditionally this was something that was passed down from generation to generation, and often told in a poetic form, so it would be easier to remember. Today, an epic can refer to any work of literature or film that portrays a hero performing heroic deeds while going on a quest or adventure. So let's look at some examples here. And I bet you didn't realize these were considered epics, but movies and books like The Lord of the Rings, Hunger Games, Harry Potter, even the Avengers movies could be considered epics. Anything where you have heroes going on some sort of quest, and there's magical elements and some other things to look for. So basically, what we're looking for in an epic are these 5 elements here: epic hero, epic plot, epic setting, epic themes, and archetypes. So let's talk a little bit about each one. First, we have epic hero. Now, this is probably the easiest to identify, and it's probably the most important element of an epic. You have to have a hero. You have to have somebody some character that possesses some type of superhuman quality. Either they're really strong, they're really smart, or they're just really brave. It's something that sets them apart. And oftentimes they're helped or harmed by the gods or fate. Some sort of magical being is helping them. And often they embody qualities valued by their culture of origin. So in the story that we're going to read, it's from ancient Greece. And so you'll see that a lot of the values that we have don't necessarily match with what the ancient Greeks believed. And so in that story, the hero might not necessarily seem like a hero to us, but would have been a hero to the ancient Greeks. And the last part is overcome perilous situations. Just like when you think the character is going to for sure die, they find a way to get out of it. Epic plot. In a epic story, you have to have a plot that matches the epic hero, something about them going on a long, strange journey. They're going on some type of adventure, and along the way they're going to fight monsters, they're going to run into bad weather, they're going to have to deal with gods or goddesses. And when they battle, when they fight, it's always a big deal. It's never just some little skirmish. It's always some type of major battle. And so, the example I've given you here is in the Avengers movies. When they fight, they really fight. They want to make it a big war, a big deal. Epic setting. The setting is extremely important in an epic because you have to make it fit the idea that there's something magical going on and fantastic exotic lands. It's not going to be just a normal setting. It's going to be something that allows these creatures and these heroes, they seem normal in their setting, even though the setting is not very realistic. Epic themes. We've talked about themes in class already, and these are things that the author wants you to get out of this, understand what's important. And so an epic theme is going to show what it means to be a hero, what should be important to a hero, to be heroic. Courage, loyalty, beauty, the fate of a nation, life and death, homecoming. These are all epic themes that we will discuss a little further when we get into our reading. Lastly is the last element is archetypes. And these are characters and situations that are recognized across time and culture. It doesn't matter what the setting is. It doesn't matter what the what the time period is. These are characters that when you see them, and you know who they are. You've got a brave hero. You've got a monstrous beast that they've got to fight. You've got the loyal sidekick that's going to stay with the hero and help him out. You might have the princess, the damsel in distress that has to be rescued. And so these are things that we see over and over again in stories, and they're believable. We already know what they are. You don't have to explain to somebody what a wizard is, because we've seen wizards in stories many times before. And so, this guy is a magical being. He can do all sorts of magical things. He's a wizard. That's easy to understand. You got this guy who's really, really good at shooting a bow and arrow. We don't have to explain that to people. People understand that is a pretty common thing to have in an action-adventure movie or story. So these are called archetypes, things that you see over and over again. It doesn't matter the time period, the setting. These characters continue to exist. And here's some other great examples here. You can see that in these different movies, you kind of have the same idea going on in each one. And Harry Potter, of course, the hero is going to be Harry Potter. Dumbledore is going to be the wise old man, Voldemort's enemy. And the last thing there, Ron is the trickster. And you can see they compare him to other movies. Look at the bottom, Finding Nemo. The hero is Marlin, the dad, trying to find his son again. You got the wise old turtle. You've got the enemy, which is the little girl, Darla. And so, you have all these elements that are pretty common. These are archetypes that you see over and over and over again in different movies. All right, so what we're building up to is the Odyssey. That is going to be our next story that we read, and it's a perfect example of an epic poem. This was a story that probably started off actually as just stories that were told by word of mouth, passed down from person to person, until eventually they were gathered together into one large story. And the person who put that together is believed to be a man named Homer. And we don't know a whole lot about Homer, and actually there's some people who say Homer was never actually real. It's kind of debatable if he actually existed. But he was supposedly a blind man, and he would go around telling these stories of the Odyssey and also the Iliad by memory. He just memorized them. And eventually people wrote them down, but we don't know exactly what the original stories were exactly like, because we just don't have that record of that. And so he wrote, or it's attributed to him that he wrote or told these two stories. One known as the Iliad, which tells the story of Achilles and the Trojan War. And the other is the Odyssey, which tells the story of Odysseus and his journey home after the Trojan War. So we're going to focus more on the Odyssey. We talked a little bit about the Trojan War and the Trojan horse and Odysseus' role in that. But we're really going to focus on what happens in the Odyssey with Odysseus trying to get back to his homeland of Ithaca. This story is really long. You can see the book here on the slideshow. It's really long. We're definitely not going to read the whole thing. It's just too much to read. And so what we'll do is we'll actually just read little chunks of the text. And what these are actually called episodes. So think about like a TV show has episodes. That's basically what's happening here. They're like chapters, but they have more of a clear beginning and end, like a TV show. Normally in a 30-minute TV show, the character is presented with a problem. By the end of that show, they've solved it. There's not a whole lot of to be continued episodes here. This is going to be something. Odysseus will go on a different adventure, and normally he will solve that adventure by the end of our episode that we read. And the episodes are really divided up by the different destinations that Odysseus travels to. In the story, Odysseus travels by boat. He travels around from island to island. He doesn't have like a really large ship where he can travel directly from Troy to his home of Ithaca, and so he has to hop around from place to place. And of course, he gets a little bit lost along the way. He gets a little bit sidetracked, and that's all part of the story, part of the adventure. But each episode is really divided up into the different places that he goes and the different interactions and adventure that he has on those different islands. And again, we're only going to read selected episodes. We're not going to read the entire thing. I'll try my best to fill in the blanks for you. There's not a whole lot of things that I won't be able to tell you about the Odyssey. The story will make sense even though we're only reading bits and pieces of it. We're not reading the whole thing. Why is the Odyssey important? Why are we reading this 3,000 plus year old text? Well, it's the original adventure story. It really inspired and laid the foundation for the other adventure, superhero books, movies, and video games that we enjoy today. Without something like the Odyssey, we would not have superheroes, we would not have Lord of the Rings, we would not have Harry Potter, we would not have Mario, because those are all very much inspired by the Odyssey and the plot of the Odyssey and how that story takes place.